Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lisa Keslar from Keslar Insurance, and we're joining you today on behalf of Cheers for Charity. We're not a formal nonprofit, but we are putting together a program where we share the goals and the more details about local nonprofits so people can know more about all the great work that's being done in our community. And I have the privilege of working on this with my dear friend, JoAnn Burchuk. Hi, JoAnn.
Hello. Hi, I'm JoAnn Burchuk. I'm with Lighthouse Physical Therapy, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Bob Brusa, who is with Warrior Connection and does so many amazing things for our veterans. So Bob, welcome, and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Warrior Connection.
Thank you, JoAnn. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, you girls need to be very proud about, what you're doing here in terms of making the communities aware of some of these nonprofits that are out there, and I thank you for the great work that you're doing. I'm Bob Brusa. I'm the former chairman of the board for 5 years, actually, with the Warrior Connection, and currently I'm a facilitator, and I act as one of their primary consultants for a lot of their board issues and just about all the issues, actually. I work in the veteran community because I am a veteran. I spent a number of years in the Vietnam War as a Green Beret and suffered from the things that veterans do suffer from in post-traumatic stress in combat environments and those types of things. And over the years, I had what I like to describe as my path of destruction, which is a myriad of issues in terms of alienating my children and multiple relationship problems and just problems in general that crept up over the course of time upon my return from that particular war. And it had a tremendous and very severe adverse effect on my family life. And, to include divorce and separation and alienation of children, like I said, and friends and family. And I moved around a lot, and it actually was instrumental in terms of what type of career I chose after I had returned to college when I came back from the war. And I chose to be a tennis professional. And I did it because it was physically rewarding for me, because as a Green Beret, you can imagine what kind of shape I was in and how much the demand was for me to feel that adrenaline of being in shape and being in a competitive environment. So being a tennis professional was perfect for me. And also, I really didn't have to communicate or become intimate with my clientele or with any of the people that I work with. So again, it fed right into my PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet who is my current wife, Sue, and she was such a heartfelt individual and such a wonderful gal after all the previous relationships that I had, that when that relationship started to falter somewhat because of two of her current children. One of them was an adopted child that had Asperger's syndrome. And when we went to war, and it became an issue for me, I recognized at that point that it was time for me to get some help. I wasn't willing to sit there and play that same game, which we call the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I looked in the mirror one day and I said, Bob, what's the common denominator with all these failures in life? And it was looking back at me in the mirror. So I knew I was in a lot of trouble. I pretty much hit rock bottom. And, I was running the risk of, imploding in that relationship. So I put my hand up and I got some help. And fortunately, I had a counselor I've been working with for years who had relocated from Springfield, Massachusetts to Keene, New Hampshire. And as in our marriage with Sue, I moved to New Hampshire from Connecticut. And the counselor recommended that I attend this brand new program called the Warrior Connection. And it was a 6.5-day retreat in the woods, in a yurt in the middle of the woods in Vermont. And being a native Vermonter, I wasn't afraid of that factor, but I was a little bit concerned about really looking inward and looking at what was going on inside of me. And the program turned out to be just a complete revelation and completely changed my life around. And it changed my relationships around, and it really, really brought me back to some semblance of sanity. The Warrior Connection was originally, it's 9 years old. It was originally put together by Dr. Ann Black. And she came out after 25 years of spending 25 years in child grief in the psychotherapy area. She decided that with her PhD, she wanted to do something for the veteran community because she didn't feel that the veterans were welcomed home and they weren't, being treated as well as they could be in this particular aspect. And of course, the scary part about the veteran community is that that number, that 22 suicide a day number, is frightening. So here we go. I said, okay, I put my hand up and I said, all right, I'll take a leap of faith and I'll make an attempt at this. And lo and behold, after 6.5 days in the woods, I came out a completely different individual. The same individual that was always there. I had just buried it and hadn't rediscovered it. And it's kind of unique. The program is so unique in that it uses expressive arts as a medium. They do a tremendous amount of body work, which JoAnn, I know you'll appreciate because of what you do for a career and a business. And post-traumatic stress lives here, but who you are and who's large and in charge is here. And this connection between here and here gets severed when you enter into the military, simply because what they ask you to do and the duties that they ask you to perform, if this was in charge, there would be a lot of hesitation and a lot of reluctancy, and in many cases you wouldn't do what they're going to ask you to do. So it becomes very cerebral, and we take orders and we do what we believe we do, for God and country and for each other, and we form this tremendous bond and brotherhood. But when we go through, we go through this trauma, we go through these traumatic events, it has an incredibly deep long-term effect on all of us. And what the Warrior Connection does is it's figured out a method in which to reconnect from here to here and to put this guy back in charge again. And there's no real cure for post-traumatic stress, but it can be managed extraordinarily well. I now, which I did not have the skill set before, can recognize when that is I'm beginning to get triggered, and it's beginning to create anxiety and depression and problems within my own psyche. And I can say, oh, wow. And all these voices that speak to me about this, that, and the other that's going on. And I can say, all right, I appreciate the voices. Thank you. That's good information, I think. Let me go down here and let me drop down 9.5 inches and see how I feel about that. And once I have developed that skill set in order to do that, a whole different process takes place. And you really begin to be able to sift between what is real and what is not real, and what is you and what is not you, who you truly are. So this program is based on that concept. The Greeks and the Romans and the Native American Indians all treated their warriors when they came off the battlefield by doing a tremendous amount of body work with spas and massages and hot baths and yoga and stretching and learning to breathe. All of those things are integrated into this particular program on a regular basis. And in effect, it's all about how do you feel about things as opposed to what do you think about things. It's not about what you think about things, it's how do you feel about it. And that's the true essence of the program. And when you do artwork, which is what Dr. Black brought to this particular program, having worked with children, as you know, children can't always articulate. They can't always tell you what's going on within them, but they can play with blocks and they can draw pictures and they can do things in the art field that clearly can be read and clearly can be interpreted and understand just exactly what's going on within that child's psyche. So we use expressive arts as that. So when we go through these different stations of our life over this 6.5 day retreat process, we do and we perform art projects that demonstrate how that particular aspect in our life, what that felt like, what that was like for us. And everything that was ever jammed down, all of a sudden comes out. And it really creates an element of freedom and understanding and you begin to understand that those are just experiences that you've had. They don't define who you are, they don't make you who you are, but they do have cause and effect. And now you know how to treat those and how to deal with those. We learn mindfulness, we learn meditation, we learn all of those wonderful, wonderful things that inwardly process and let us learn about our bodies and learn about what we're feeling. You know, it's kind of interesting. The first time I learned mindfulness was about just being still and quiet in darkness and stillness and just scanning your body and just trying to feel and learn. What do your toes feel like? What do your knees feel like? What does your leg feel like? Is there any pain in your body? Do you notice your breathing? What's your breathing? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it weak? I mean, all of those little things make have a dramatic impact in terms of processing and dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with all of those symptoms that come along and accompany post-traumatic stress disorder. So our success rate has been phenomenal. We only treat 8 warriors at a time. The only person that's a non-veteran in the environment, because we create a safe space for the veterans. You know, veterans only feel safe with other veterans. And we create that safe space. And the mother figure is generally, we always have a female within the retreat process as a mother figure. And usually she's a clinician, a licensed clinician. And over the course of this 6.5-day period, you walk through periods of your life and you walk through your military experiences and you begin to understand and feel what the impact of those were. So it really allows you to deep understanding of what transpired and how to battle and how to confront when these triggers come up. And also there's a discovery process in terms of who you are. I mean, I truly had the opportunity to actually witness what my soul looks like. And that's something very few people have experienced. But I was in a perfect place and a perfect opportunity to do that. You know, I actually got to draw a picture of it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how I knew. So there's some pretty unique things that go on with this process. So the Warrior Connection is we do retreats in Vermont, we do retreats in Pennsylvania, and we're in the process of opening up some retreat centers out in the West Coast, out in the California area.
Now, Bob, are you able during this process, because it's such a small number that go to the retreat, are you able to continue with these weekends, or are you still kind of in a holding pattern in being able to do that?
Well, what we do in these retreats is the retreat is a 6.5-day, and we may have a men's retreat. We may have only 4 or 5 men's retreats in the course of the retreat season, which runs from April to October. So when we get on the West Coast, of course, we're going to expand that because the weather is more conducive. But yeah, what it allows us to do is we have facilitators that are trained and that have been through retreats like I have, like multitude of them, and they guide and they help all of these groups of veterans achieve their goals, you know, within the retreat process. And then there's a big follow-up program where we stay and we follow up with these guys all the time. I have follow-up calls, we have Facebook pages, we have a lot of links, a lot of methods in which to retain connection with all of these retreat graduates. It's very critical, simply because, you know, this, again, like I say, there's no cure, so it's a practice scenario. You need to practice the tools that you're given, and you need to practice and practice and practice. Makes it much more comfortable over the course of time. And it's easy to get back out into the toxic environment, you know, and be ill-affected and fall back into other patterns, fall back into depression, fall back into issues, you know, whether it be work or personal or whatever's happening within your life, you know, and so it's easy to fall off the wagon.
Absolutely.
In this particular thing. So yes, it's critical that we retain, you know, a connection process. We're fortunate that we get, we're getting attendees from the Veterans Administration. The VA is beginning to send us one, and they're already in counseling sessions. So the preparation for them in terms of being prepared is there. But the best part about that is that once they've completed the process with us, we can turn them back into their counseling sessions, and that follow-up is a continuing follow-up with them in terms of their meeting and getting together and talking about and staying connected with what they need to do to keep themselves, live a better life. I mean, that's really what our mantra is. Our mantra is to improve the lives of veterans and their families. The types of retreats that we have are both for male veterans and female veterans. We also do retreats for spouses. My wife, Sue, has attended the retreat, is actually a trained mentor and can mentor one of the retreats as well. So it's remarkable. Volunteers come in and prepare all the meals. Everything is basically done volunteer-wise. We have an enormous volunteer staff, and we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people that are, that want to help or that want to train or even want to train to be facilitation or mentors or want to get involved in it somehow, way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Do you have some retreats coming up soon?
Well, with the COVID situation, we haven't scheduled anything at this point, not yet. We're waiting to get things turned back on again. We're sitting in advance. As a matter of fact, we just added 10 people to the board of directors. So that's really been a massive task to add to the organization, but it's growing and it's getting better. All of our funding is done privately. It's all through donations and contributions. So it's former graduates and connections. The Gary Sinise Foundation is taking a look at us. I run a golf tournament that gives us $40,000, $50,000 a year up in Maine. We have donations coming from all over the place. We have a multitude of partnerships with people. The cost to the veterans is nothing. For the male or female veterans or the spouses, we fly them in from all the different states in the United States. We have a partner that takes care of that transportation for us, that flies them in and flies them home before and after the retreats. We've got partners all over the place. It's pretty interesting. We actually, the head of the golf tournament, the head of the the golf director up in Maine, lost his son to suicide just when he came back from Afghanistan. And his wife was actually pregnant, and he never met his daughter Lily. So this fellow Mike, this grandfather Mike, has done this golf tournament on behalf of his granddaughter. And we managed, through a partnership arrangement, to find an organization that pays 100% college tuition for any deceased child of a veteran that has been lost by suicide. So this organization has stepped up, and we've actually got to provide this girl, Lily, who's now in her teens, we've got to provide her with a full-blown, paid-for college education tuition when she's ready to go to school.
Wow,
so that's the kind
fantastic.
of opportunity. Yeah, it gives you the goosebumps a little bit. Those kinds of things happen, and of course there's a multitude of stories of veterans that have been through the retreat in terms of what life was like for them before, what transpired during, and what life is like for them after. I mean, I know one fellow who literally his two children from a divorce were sitting in the back bedroom of his condominium in Massachusetts, and this fellow was sitting on the couch with his new girlfriend walking in, and there was a loaded .45 next to him on the couch, and he had already put it in his mouth to pull the trigger, and it misfired. And we got him some week to 10 days later, and he is a completely changed soul. He's a wonderful dad, very productive person contributing in society right now. He works in equine, he works in the horses area. He provides horse therapy for PTSD. He's tremendous, a tremendous guy. And if you can only imagine his experiences, he was a firefighter for the Air Force, and he was running toward the jets when they were on fire, trying to pull the pilots out. As opposed to you and I, when we see something like that, we're going to run the other way.
Exactly.
So you can only imagine, the trauma that he suffered. So there's some pretty unique stories that we have about keeping people. Our numbers are phenomenal. We graduated hundreds of veterans. We've only had 3 divorces and no suicides in the 9 years that we've been in business. So not too many people can talk about that number either. That's a pretty solid number.
Yeah. That's
so
amazing.
it's a lot of fun. It's incredibly rewarding. I'm obviously a graduate and have attended multiple retreats and facilitate them. And I get jazzed every time I think about it, every time I do something, and every time I get a call. I mean, and I'm on the phone a lot. I get a lot of 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls, but that's okay. the whole process for me is really simple. I had such a devastating time for so many years, you know, and hurt so many people in my path of destruction over the years. And it took me many years to get help before I finally hit rock bottom and got help. That if I can help one veteran in my entire life, that's a win for me. That's a real big win. So I will do it, and I'll continue to do it as long as I'm able to speak and be conscious, you know. Important stuff.
Well, my guess is you've helped a lot more than one veteran
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
lifetime, and we absolutely appreciate all of the work your amazing organization does. I every time you talk, Bob, it just gives me goosebumps, and I'm so thankful for the work that you guys do. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and you know, when I was the board chairman, I'm such a global thinker. I had a really hard time just staying within the veteran community, which has tremendous needs. But you know, PTSD is everywhere. The suicide rate in this country and in the world is horrible. It's horrific. You know, the numbers are just astronomical. They're scary. So really, I want this work for everybody. And I may not live to see that day, but you know, I can only wish and only hope that there's enough people and there's enough discovery process that there are other people doing the similar kinds of work that will help. You know, everybody deserves it. Everybody, battered children, first responders, police officers, firefighters, you know, EMTs. I mean, everybody that's on the line, everybody that suffers trauma of any kind. And I don't care, you know, I can tell you a little story about one of the stations that we do. It's called Forgiveness, the Forgiveness Station. It's where you write down on a scroll piece of paper, on a 2x4 piece of wood, every single person that you've ever harmed or has ever harmed you. And then you go through a process of making a prayer arrow, going to a sacred fire, and watching it burn and forgiving those people. I mean, it's mind blowing. I mean, if you can only imagine being at war, and like I was, I'll give you an example of being at war with the Viet Cong. You know, being hunted by these people, and you're hunting them, and forgiving people that were shooting at you, and asking them to forgive you that you were shooting at them. You know, that's
Bob, it's so amazing and so touching, and I think there's so many things we could cover here. I'd love to be able to make sure people know how they can learn more, right? We know that you have so much to share with us. What's the best way for them to learn more about the project, and you know, to get in touch, get details? You know, how can they reach out?
Yeah, it's called the Warrior Connection. It's the warriorconnection.org is the website. It's very comprehensive. You could spend a lot of time on the website. There is a great deal to see. It'll introduce all the corporate people, all the officers. It'll talk about the family retreats, the female retreats, and the spouse retreats, and the male retreats. It'll talk about stories about people who have attended them. You know, most of the people that we get come from the wives and the spouses, or they come from families. The veteran doesn't necessarily, like I did, put up their hand and say, I need help, I'm in trouble. It's a pretty proud bunch of people that you're talking to, you know, who are taught not to cry and not to whine and not to complain and take care of everybody else except yourself, you know, which obviously doesn't make any sense. You can't be around to take care of everybody else if you're not well. So that's another thing that we come to realize. The Warrior Connection, there's an 800 number on the website. It's 800, it's 866-278-3155. The current executive director, who's been the executive director for many years, is incredibly competent. Will always call you back. His name is Aaron Phillips. Aaron Phillips, a wonderful guy. He lives in California, but he travels forever and ever all over the place. He's everywhere. Our board of directors is all over the place, and all of those people are listed. Their contacts are listed, and they're easy to talk to. Our annual report was just put on the website. You can look at the numbers. You can see where the money goes. I think we have 2 paid employees in the entire organization. Everything else is, you know, everything else goes right to Veteran Services. That's what's critical to us. Everything is like that. Everything goes critical.
That's fantastic. Bob, I think there's so many good things about this program and the work that you do. Thank you so much for doing it. Like JoAnn said, every time we talk to you, it's so touching and so meaningful. This group is such an important group. There are so many people who have served our country that deserve support and deserve this and a whole bunch more, right? because they've given so much to us. So I'm grateful for you doing your part in this. It's really amazing. And I hope people watch this video and they think of their loved ones that can take advantage of these great resources that are available, or the people they know, whether it's someone they work with or someone in their community somehow, and share and get the words out about all the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time today to share, you're such a personal story. It makes such an important connection to understand how real this really is. And it's everybody. It could be your dad, it could be your brother, it could be your uncle, it could be a coworker, and like you said, it might even be a female, someone who's served. It could be a lot of people. So thank you so much for getting the word out with us today. We are so grateful for your time, and so grateful for the work that you do.
Thank you. And to reach me by email, it's bob@warriorconnection.org. To reach Aaron, it's aaron@warriorconnection.org. So it's very, very easy to communicate with any of us, and all of that information is on the website. I'm happy to do it, and I'm so proud and so grateful, and thank you for allowing me to be your guest. You guys are great hosts.
Loved it. Thank you, Bob.
Love seeing you and talking with you, Bob. It's always so fascinating, and God, it just gives me the chills. Like JoAnn said, you sort of get that, like, oh wow. So thank you so much for sharing, and we look forward to hopefully people seeing this.
Thank you so much again. God bless.